Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, activists, government leaders. We speak with each one to one. You'd think Mary Rockefeller Morgan had it all, given her pedigree, daughter of Governor and then Vice-President Nelson Rockefeller. But money and privilege can't make up for loss of the most primal kind. She's written an account of her journey to find peace and acceptance of the fact that her twin brother Michael, who disappeared off the coast of New Guinea, will never come home. It was a journey 50 years in the making. The result, her book, Beginning with the End, a memoir of twin loss and healing, has just been published by Vantage Point Press. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mary, your book, as I said in a nutshell, is about how you finally came to terms with the death of your twin brother Michael, who died in 1961. Why write the book at this point in time?
You know, it's interesting. I think to go right to the heart of it, I'm a psychotherapist, and I work mainly with twins now, and especially twins who've lost twins. And when we had the terrible disaster of 9/11, I was fortunate enough to be able to do a group with twins who'd lost their twins in the Trade Center disaster. And the book came out of that experience. I'll never forget the day they first came together, all of them, and we sat in a circle. And the twins just naturally, these are all twinless twins. They'd all lost their twin in the Trade Center. So they shared that incredible sadness and tragedy. They instinctively understood each other, they instinctively trusted each other, and they instinctively opened up to each other. It was an absolutely beautiful thing to see that outpouring to each other and the beginning of their healing taking place right in front of me. What I felt was, besides being incredibly pleased with what was happening, I felt, wow, I wish I was a member of the group. Because for 25 years, I never spoke about what was happening inside me. I never met another twin who had lost a twin. And I was completely isolated with the trauma of what had happened. And so there was a big piece of me that wanted to share my experience the way they were doing. Mm-hmm. The other thing was, very quickly, is that they asked me to write the book.
The twins?
These twins, yes.
Okay.
They very much wanted the issues of twin bereavement to be able to be aired, so that they could be understood.
Because it's a very unique kind of bereavement,
exactly,
which is the theme of the book. Now, you describe what sounds like a pretty idyllic childhood, growing up at your family's estate in Pocantico Hills. Where is that? Is that upstate New York?
Yes, that's about an hour north of New York, along the Hudson.
With your parents, your three older siblings, and your brother Michael. Did you have a sense as a very young child that your family was special? Or was it just your family?
I had a sense that they were special in that we didn't live on a street like other people. We lived in an apartment in New York like other people, but in the country we lived on an estate, and that I didn't understand. There's a little street that you come off the Sawmill River Parkway in order to get to the road that leads to our place. And that street has all these houses and trees and kids bicycling, and that's where every time I drove by it, that's where I wanted to live. I wanted to be like other kids, so I did feel special in that sense, and also was teased a lot for being a Rockefeller in my class at school. So it wasn't, I didn't feel that it was an advantage necessarily growing up.
But your father was certainly, obviously, a very powerful figure in your life, as he was in many other lives.
That's true.
What sort of exciting, or what was that? What was it like being his as a little girl being his daughter?
Well, he was an incredibly exciting person in all of our lives. He was very enthusiastic. We all adored him. And we loved him also because life was always very exciting, and he was always bringing fascinating people home. And all the time he would bring people home for breakfast that he was going to be working with or discussing issues with. So we got to see and be involved with a lot of different fascinating people who were doing fascinating things in the world since we were little, and that was wonderful.
You describe your mother as the person who really instilled the core values in the children.
Yes, she did. My mother was a person who really believed in the truth. She believed in loyalty. She believed in responsibility and caring and connecting in your family. And she also had a kind of rare sense of humor. So she was very much a shoulds and oughts person in that sort of 50s world that I grew up in. But on the other hand, she had this wonderful sense of humor, which just offset it and made her somebody that I remember with such fondness.
What was your relationship with Michael, your twin brother, like when you were little?
We were extremely close when we were little, and we shared the same crib until we were probably close to 2.5, 3, and Michael climbed out.
And that was it.
And that was it. We shared the same room until we were about 5 or 6. And then my family got the idea that we should be separated, and that was very difficult for me. And so we moved from Washington to New York. We were sent to different schools. Michael was really put with my older brother, 2 years older brother, Stephen, and sent to Buckley School, and I went to Brearley, and I was the one who was sort of separated from the rest of them, and it was very hard. It was a real feeling of loss and confusion.
You use the word isolation a lot in the book. Is that when it started?
Well, I felt isolated in that experience. The whole issue of isolation, I think, I refer to mainly in terms of what happens to twins.
Right, right.
You know, and what happens to people who have a deep personal loss in
Right,
life.
right. So your father left your mother after many years of marriage to marry someone else, and not even 2 months after your parents split up, your brother Michael disappeared. Tell us the circumstances of his disappearance.
Well, he went to New Guinea after he graduated from Harvard and had done his military service, I guess he did 8 weeks, and then he was supposed to be in the reserve after that. And then he went to New Guinea to be on an anthropological expedition where he was the sound recording a man for this anthropological expedition in the highlands of New Guinea. Then he went down after that was over. That was about 4 or 5 months, and then he went to the coast of New Guinea, where he went on 2 trips to collect art for the Museum of Primitive Art in New York, to collect the sculpture from this very, very talented group of sculptors that were that lived in what they call the Asmat area along the coast, southern coast of New Guinea. And he had been on the board of trustees because my father started this museum. He was very young. He was incredibly intuitive and talented, and he knew just what was good and what wasn't. And he also went to have an experience that was completely outside of anything he had ever had, to also master an adventure of going into the most remote area in the entire world.
Right. And he was lost in a boat accident, right?
He was. He was in the delta of the Ilandan River, and there was sort of a confluence of tides and the flow of the outgoing river and the moon and all that, and it became extremely choppy. He had a catamaran, which basically was 2 canoes with a platform and a little house built on it to keep the sun off. And it basically swamped, the canoe swamped, and then after that, within an hour or so, the whole boat turned over. It capsized.
And his body was never found.
He
Correct.
floated out to sea, and he tried to swim ashore to get help, but he was probably close to 10 or 12 miles off the coast. It was terribly big outgoing current that was going out and down the coast, and he was never found.
How did your family deal with his death?
That's a big question. I mean, I think the sadness is that we never really talked about it much between us. And my mother was she had just gotten a divorce from my father, and I think in order to cope, she really felt like she could not cry, and she didn't want me to cry, and that was very much a huge, it really stopped the natural process of the grief. And so we were stoical. We really didn't talk too much about it, you know, and it was very sad in that way. It was just very sad. We were really out of connection.
Now, everybody appeared to just sort of move on, and you appeared to move on. You had recently been married to a naval officer, so you had your husband. Eventually, you had 3 children. You had a beautiful home in Westchester. You were involved in a number of good causes. Head Start was one of them, I believe. And then you had a kind of meltdown.
Yeah, I repressed the grief totally. Everybody seemed to move on. I had not even connected with the fact that Michael had died. It's amazing how the human mind and body can know things on one level and not on another. So on one level, everybody was saying it had been too long and he was definitely dead, and then the whole other level inside me said he's not dead at all. I thought I had seen him. I thought I saw him on the street. And then I would put it out of my mind, and life just got overwhelming. I was really caught in that time between the 50s and 60s, trying to lead a 50s life of a beautiful home and doing the right thing by my kids, trying to work for civil rights, trying to work against nuclear power, trying to raise kids, trying to run away from what was really true, was that my brother had died, my twin brother, and I broke down.
Now you went to
handle it.
Now you did go to a therapist, a Dr. Simmons, who basically told you, hey, you know, you weren't even identical twins, you were fraternal twins, so your connection to him is no different from the connection that your older siblings had with them, and they've moved on, so you got to move on. Do you think if you had had the right therapist at that time, that you could have resolved this issue of the loss of your brother much sooner?
Much sooner.
Yeah.
My therapist really felt that 6, 7 years had passed, and that was enough, and I needed to move on with my life. That was the big word, move on with your life. You've got a lot of going for you, Mary, you need to move on. And the intuitive knowing that I had was just squashed.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break. Then we'll be back with more with Mary R. Morgan. Her book, Beginning with the End, a memoir of twin loss and healing, has just been published by Vantage Point Press.
John can hold his daughter. Marilyn can laugh with her sons. Raphael can play with his sister. Gregory can fly. None of this would have been possible without an organ donor. Keep life going. Sign up to be an organ donor today. You can register when you renew your driver's license or online at savelivesnewyork.org. The more New Yorkers who sign up, the more lives saved. One of them could be someone you love.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Mary R. Morgan, author of Beginning with the End, a memoir of twin loss and healing, which has just been published by Vantage Point Press. We're going to skip ahead because, you know, so much happened. You were divorced from your first husband. Later you married Tom Morgan, who was editor of the Village Voice. both of you published a magazine together. Sounded like a wonderful marriage, at least for a while. You had your work at the Metropolitan Museum to create the Rockefeller Wing, which was a tribute to your brother's vision and commitment. And then later, and I think perhaps the catalyst for that was a creative writing course that you had when your teacher told you to write down describe the essence of who you are, and you wrote, "I am a twin." And this led you to begin to explore the whole issue of what it means to be a twin and what it means to lose a twin. Tell me about that.
I think that the thing that was so interesting is that I really had to be able to own my identity as a twin before I could own the fact that I had lost my twin. So that was a really important thing, and I began to read about twins, and I began to try to learn everything I could about twins. And then I had several experiences which are written about in the book, which brought me closer to this place where I was coming into the realization that Michael actually had died.
You began to explore
yes,
what it means to be a twin and what it means to have lost a twin. And I know eventually this led you, and through your sister Anne, to
That's right.
the vision quest.
That's right. So then, that's right. And I interviewed my mother all about what it was like when I was little.
But you and Michael were
bond.
like, right?
Yeah, and then I interviewed my nurse, and then various things happened that led me to the fact that what happened was that my subconscious mind burst through into my conscious mind, and I realized that I felt I was in big trouble because I knew that I was going to have to, I felt I was going to break down again. And what was really happening was the grief was coming up. Mm-hmm. As I had made that realization, or was making the realization that Mike was really gone and wasn't coming back, then the grief was really ready to come up. So my sister told me about this trip called Returning to Earth, and there were 3 psychologists and 15 people, and they were all in transition, and they were all gathering for a 2-week gathering in the mountains near Telluride, the San Juan Mountains up above Telluride, and we were to be together for 2 weeks and to explore these transitions. And this was based a lot on Native American tradition, the whole idea of when a member of the tribe, or the leader of the tribe finds that what's been serving them, either in the leadership capacity or whatever, no longer serves them, they either come upon a disaster in the tribe, but there needs to be new thinking, new way of working and living. So you need to go somewhere to let the old go. And that's what this was about.
And so the people who were on the quest, and there were how many, 14?
15 about,
15
yeah.
questers. Now your issue was your twinship and the loss of your twin, but I assume that the other people had other issues.
Oh yes. So, a lot of transitional issues for people, divorces, going into new work, all kinds of things.
When I read about this experience, group sessions, a nature walk, sessions where you called up images of different animals from different parts of your body to guide you and protect you, a dancing ceremony, a sweat lodge, finally 4 solitary nights spent in the wilderness alone without food. All sounds very, very new age to me. Did it feel that way for you? Did you say, this is weird, or how did it strike you?
It's such a great question. The fact that there were 3 psychologists, all from very, understood backgrounds, who were leading this was a big help. The fact that my sister was in training to be a guide also helped. So yes, I was curious about this, but I love nature, and everything that we did if I found that if you opened, or when I opened myself up without a lot of judgment to what was happening, it was actually incredible, because what this was all about, this quest, they called it a vision quest, was all about letting go what no longer served and calling in the new.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and being in relationship in that journey.
I have to say, I got a little nervous when I started reading about the Sweat Lodge, because, you know, this recent case where, you know, people perished in a similar case. And I said, boy, I hope she wasn't in that one, you know.
No. That was not a responsible situation that happened. We were very carefully explained the idea of going into a place and where the rocks were put into an enclosed space that we built, actually, out of willow boughs. Mm-hmm. My sister wanted me to make it clear that it's not pine boughs, or they would have gotten too hot and maybe burned, but it was willow boughs. And so you sweat, and you sweat out your impurities, and you pray, and you ask for a vision, the way in which you ask for the new to come in, and you open yourself to releasing the old.
So it's a purifying kind of thing.
It's a purifying kind of thing.
Okay.
And we were told that if it was too much, to leave. Nobody was put in a position where they were compromised.
Right. Now, the animal imagery, do the animals represent different parts of your personality, different parts of your consciousness? What do you think they are in the final analysis, the animals?
Well, this was, to try to sum it up, this kind of imagery work is basically relaxing and closing your eyes and inviting in your imagination. Once you're deeply relaxed, you put your attention on various different parts of the body and invite an animal or an image to come. We seem to have an extraordinary ability within ourselves that is not tapped into in our culture, or only in small part. We have a healing, integrating process that goes on inside ourselves.
And the animals are part of that.
Well, the images often come in animal forms.
Okay.
And then it's like a waking dream. You go into a dream but you're not really asleep. And the thing that was so extraordinary is that I was just like you. I knew nothing about this, but I went with it, and it was amazingly integrative for me and helped me enormously, and helped me also to feel really connected both inside to my own true feelings and where the wisdom of healing lay. Because one of the things I point out in this book is that we have a natural healing imperative. Through my experience and through working with twins, I see it. We have, I believe deeply, that we have a process just like when you cut your hand and your whole body system goes into healing that wound. Mm-hmm. We have the same thing in our psyches. And that comes into play if you connect with it. And that's part of what I hope to gift by this book.
So did you find that the Vision Quest really helped you break the unhealthy relationship that you had with your deceased brother? And make it a healthier one?
Well, the unhealthy, let's try to put that a little bit in perspective. What it helped me to do was to let go of the temporal life of Michael that no longer exists. Mm-hmm. That's the big issue in loss, in deep personal loss, is letting go the temporal life of the person you love.
We have just 2 minutes left, and I assume that is what you're trying to do in your therapy sessions with the twins that you work with.
That's absolutely part of it. That integrating the loss rather, is part of, or the big job of integrating the loss is to let go that temporal life, and then to be open to the love that always will exist forever, and to the character and to the memories that one has with another person, which one can access without deep pain, and that can really, nurture your life and be there in your life in a positive way as you go forward as an individual.
And I assume you feel that one can achieve this through the right kind of therapy, as opposed to necessarily going
there's so many ways. The point is to get in touch with your feelings as they naturally come up, to express them in some form, and to release them. That's the healing process, and that is best done in connection, in relationship, whether it be to nature, where I was out there by myself and had those ceremonies for Michael that I have no memory of when they happened in real life. I did them and made that completeness for me and my brother, letting him go.
It was a very fascinating book, you know, learning more about this really unique bond that exists between twins and how you go about dealing with the loss of a twin. It's a very, very unique thing. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who will relate to what you wrote in your book and be helped by it.
Thank you very much.
We're out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank Mary Morgan for joining me today. Beginning with the End, a memoir of twin loss and healing, has just been published by Vantage Point Press. For the City University and for One to One, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.